Hello. Today we're going to talk about factoring by grouping, which is a common method associated with four-term polynomials. I've broken it down into four easy steps. Let's try and follow these, and this will help you out in your track to factoring. All right, step number one is to look for the greatest common factor among all terms. If it's one there, we're going to extract it, and then we're going to look at what remains. Step two, from what remains, group together two terms with a common factor. Step three, we're going to factor the greatest common factor from each group of two terms, which will eventually group these two together. And step four, we're going to factor out a common binomial and rewrite our answer. Example 1, we have factor 8t to the fourth plus 12 cubed plus 16t squared plus 24t. Alright, ask yourself, step 1, is there the greatest common factor? Numerically, between an 8, a 12, a 16, and a 24, what number do they all have in common? They all have a 2 and a 4, but 4 is the greatest. Alright, they all have a t in common, and the smallest t term is t to the first, so I can factor that out. Okay, next step. We're going to group. So I'm going to extract this right here. I'm going to look at what remains after I factor out a 4t from each one of those. So I have 4t use a big bracket here. I've got 4 factored out of 8 is 2. T factored out of t to the fourth leaves us with t to the third. Four factored out from 12 is plus 3. And t factored out from t to the third leaves us with t squared. Okay, next I've got 4 factored out of 16 leaves us with 4. And t factored out of t squared leaves us with t. And our last term, 4 factored out of 24 leaves us with a 6. And t factored out of t leaves us with simply a 1, or t to the 0. Okay. Now our step was to group these. So I'm going to group here my first two terms and my last two terms. Okay, I'm going to bring all this down. Leaves me with 4t What is the greatest common factor from 2t to the third plus 3t squared? Okay, the only thing they have in common is t, and the highest power is, or the lowest power between the two is 2, so they all have a t squared. So that leaves me with t squared times what's left over? 2t to the first. Okay. I managed to get that because I factored out a t squared. And factoring is basically division. And when you're dividing bases with exponents, remember you are subtracting the exponents there. So 3 minus 2 left us with a 1, which we'll leave it as understood 1 there. Factor out t squared from 3t squared leaves us with just simply the 3. Okay. Plus, what's the greatest common factor between 4t and a 6? It's going to be a 2. So I've got 2. And after I factor out a 2 from 4t, it leaves me with 2t. And a 2 factor out of 6 leaves me with plus 3. If you'll notice now, I have two binomials that are the same. Here and here. This is a common binomial, so I can factor it out. Okay, we're gonna take it completely out. All right. So now what do I have? I've got 4t parentheses 2t plus 3 and what is left inside? T squared plus 2. And this is the final answer. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. Example number 2. We're going to factor 6x to the third plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 2. Okay, step 1. Is there a greatest common factor among all of them? Well, I see that 6 and 3 have the 3 in common, but the 3 is not in common with the negative 4, negative 2. So, the answer there is none. We do not have a greatest common factor. So we're going to move on to the next step, which means I'm going to just rewrite it here. 6x to the third plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 2. Now, I'm going to group these. Let me give myself a little space here. Minus 4x minus 2. Okay, as I group these, here, 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 I'll put a plus sign in between the two groups. Because this one had a negative 4 on the third term here. Okay, so I grouped them. Next thing is factor the greatest common factor from each group. What's the greatest common factor between the 6 and the 3? Is going to be 3. And x cubed and x squared is x squared. Okay. And what's left over? 3x squared factored out of 6x cubed leaves me with 2x. And 3x squared factored out of 3x squared is 1. Okay, in our second term, greatest common factor from negative 4x and minus 2 is a negative 2. So I'm going to factor out a negative 2. Parentheses. 2x. And negative 2 factored out of negative 2 leaves me with a plus 1. Okay, if you'll notice now, we have two binomials that are identical. So we're going to factor those out and bring them completely out to the front, like so. I'm going to rewrite 2x plus 1 times what's left over, 3x squared minus 2. There you have it. If you want to check your work with this method, we simply use either distributive property or the full method, multiply it out, and we should get our original problem up here. So let's try that. First times first is 6x to the third outside minus 4x my inside is plus 3x squared, and last times last is minus 2. Rewrite this in standard form. Gives me 6x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 2, which, if you look back, is exactly what we had at the beginning, and therefore our answer checks out. Thank you.